Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon on our presentation for federal updates and state aid programs sponsored by the Iowa Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators. Our webinar this afternoon is being broadcast from the offices of the College Aid Commission in downtown Des Moines, and our panel consists of 3 staff members. They are Carolyn Small, who is a Federal Student Aid Policy Analyst and Post-Secondary Registration Administrator for the College Aid Commission, Todd Brown, Director of Financial Aid Programs at College Aid, and myself, Julie Voss. I am the ETV and Foster Care Grant Coordinator. We have just a couple of housekeeping items to remind you of, and those are, first of all, everyone has been corporately muted on the webinar today. And this helps us reduce background noises and distractions for everyone participating. And as a result of everyone being on mute, this means that if at any time during the presentation, if you have questions, please feel free to utilize that attendee panel on the side of your screen and type out those questions for us, and we will reserve time at the end of the presentation to address those. And now there's going to be a moment or two of silence while I turn the controls over to our first presenter, Carolyn Small.
Good afternoon, this is Carolyn Small. I'm going to provide the federal update portion of this afternoon's presentation. Actually, the U.S. Department of Education did not issue a major package of regulatory changes this fall that impacts the federal student aid programs effective on July 1 of 2012. So what I'm going to highlight this afternoon are some of the changes that were actually effective July 1 of 2011, effective in the 11-12 award year and going forward. The first change has to do with federal student aid funds for books and supplies, and actually a number of the changes that I'm going to review this afternoon have to do with a student's ability to access federal student aid funds. In the case of this particular change and a couple of the others that I'm going to highlight this afternoon, I'm also going to explain briefly the U.S. Department of Education's stated rationale for that change. In this particular case, the USDE believed that it was necessary to incorporate a regulatory change relative to student access to federal student aid funds for books and supplies, because it was concerned that some colleges were delaying disbursement of federal student aid funds for extended periods during a term or payment period, or that some schools made early but only partial disbursements of federal student aid that was targeted to pay tuition and fee charges. When it promulgated these new rules, the U.S. Department of Education also specifically stated its belief that students who are not Pell eligible, in other words, those who have a higher expected family contribution, have sufficient financial resources to purchase books and supplies. So this particular regulatory change targets those who have a lower expected family contribution and are therefore Pell eligible. So under this change, and in certain conditions, colleges must now provide a way for a student who is eligible for a federal Pell Grant to use federal student aid to obtain or purchase required books and supplies early in a term or payment period. In order to have these funds made available to a student for books and supplies, a Pell eligible student must meet all federal student aid eligibility conditions 10 days before the beginning of the term or payment period, and in addition, the Pell eligible student must have a credit balance of federal student aid. A credit balance of federal student aid occurs when the total amount of federal student aid awarded to the student for the term exceeds tuition and fee charges and, if applicable, room and board charges that will be assessed to the student for that term. By the 7th day of the term or payment period, a college must now provide the lesser of the presumed federal student aid credit balance amount or the amount that the school determines that the student needs to obtain books and supplies. And again, just as a reminder, this is for Pell-eligible students. Colleges have a number of ways in which they can do this. They can make funds available for books and supplies by making a cash disbursement, using a bank-issued stored value or prepaid debit card, providing a book voucher, or otherwise extending credit to the student. And a student may opt out of the college's chosen method of providing funds for books and supplies. And in that case, the U.S. Department of Education considers the college or university to have complied with the expectation of the rule. Here's a change having to do with satisfactory academic progress as it relates to a student's continued eligibility for federal student aid. The reason for this regulatory change had to do with the fact that USDE was concerned that some college policies permitted automatic probationary periods during which students who were not making satisfactory academic progress in accordance with the school's academic progress standards nevertheless continued to receive federal student aid funds for prolonged periods without the college's intervention. And so now the new regulation requires that at a college that assesses academic progress at the end of every term or payment period, a student who is not making satisfactory academic progress may continue to receive federal student aid for only one more term or payment period under what the Federal Department of Education now calls a financial aid warning period. And then, if after the financial aid warning period, the student is still not meeting the school's satisfactory academic progress standards, the student may receive federal student aid for one additional subsequent term or payment period, but only after successfully appealing the student's loss of federal student aid eligibility. And this additional subsequent term or payment period in which a student who is not making satisfactory academic progress can continue to receive federal student aid is called, according to the Federal Department of Education's regulatory terminology, a financial aid probation. The U.S. Department of Education also felt that it was important to, for the first time, standardize terminology used by all schools to describe periods in which a student could continue to receive federal student aid who was not making satisfactory academic progress, such that in the case of a student who transferred from one school to another, all students could now understand exactly what was meant by terms like financial aid warning and financial aid probation. At a college that assesses academic progress less frequently than at the end of the term or payment period, a student who is not making satisfactory academic progress may continue to receive federal student aid only for one subsequent payment period after that student has successfully appealed his or her loss of federal student aid eligibility. There is a third option for a student who successfully appeals his or her loss of federal student aid eligibility due to failure to meet satisfactory academic progress standards, and that is a case when the student may continue to receive federal student aid under an academic plan that is agreed to by the school and the student, provided that student continues to live up to the conditions of that plan at the end of each period in which the school measures satisfactory academic progress. I should also mention that colleges are not required to permit a student who fails to make satisfactory academic progress according to the school's satisfactory academic progress standards the opportunity to appeal a loss of federal student aid eligibility when that student fails to make SAP. But in the case when a student attends a college that permits appeals, that student must now also submit information along with his or her appeal request about why the student failed to make satisfactory academic progress during the last evaluation period, and specifically what has changed in that student's situation that would allow the student to make satisfactory academic progress going forward. Here's a change having to do with the FAFSA and Parent Plus borrowers. Now, effective for the 11-12 award year, a dependent undergraduate student whose parent will apply for a Direct Plus loan must file a FAFSA even if the Direct Plus loan is the only type of federal student aid that that student will receive. This has not been the case up until the 11-12 award year, and this requirement ensures that student eligibility inquiries are conducted, for example, via automatic match with other federal agencies like the Social Security Administration to validate the student's Social Security number, to validate the student's eligible citizenship status, and if applicable, validate the fact that the male student, has registered with the Selective Service. There is a new process in place by which students may populate certain data elements on the FAFSA, and it's called the IRS Data Retrieval System. This now permits a FAFSA applicant to view and securely transfer tax information from the IRS into the FAFSA on the web. The IRS retrieval tool is now in place. Looking forward to award year 12-13 for the 12-13 FAFSA, the Federal Department of Education anticipates that the IRS data retrieval tool will be available by February 1 of 2012 for the award year 2012-13 FAFSA. And of course, this assumes that the applicant and or his parents as applicable or spouse have already filed taxes for tax year 2011. The U.S. Department of Education is stressing more and more frequently that the IRS data retrieval tool is their preferred method of providing tax information on the FAFSA. And so around April 1 of 2012, USDE will begin sending a notice to student or parent applicants who are eligible to use this IRS data retrieval tool, but who haven't done so, for example, because at the time they filled out the FAFSA, they had not yet filed their 2011 taxes, or they had only recently filed their 2011 taxes. And this notice will encourage the applicant to return to FAFSA on the web and use the IRS data retrieval tool to pull down information from the applicant's actual IRS tax filing and plug it into the 12-13 FAFSA. Here is a change that is effective for the 12-13 award year. This is the exception concerning the regulatory changes I have thus far discussed. The ones that I have previously talked about were effective for the 11-12 award year. This one is effective for the 12-13 award year, and it has to do with verification of FAFSA data. This is a process verification vis-a-vis by which colleges must verify the validity of certain FAFSA data identified by the U.S. Department of Education for all FAFSA applicants that the USDE selects. And the USDE selects applicants based upon statistical analyses of prior years based upon the highest probability of error. One of the changes for colleges and universities has to do with the fact that colleges now will no longer have the option to verify at least 30% of its federal aid applicants in an award year. Now colleges and universities must verify to some degree FAFSA data on all applicants selected by the U.S. Department of Education, and then verify the data that the USDE identifies that the school must verify for a particular applicant. So colleges will also no longer verify the same 5 data elements each year for all applicants selected for verification. Annually, the U.S. Department of Education will publish in the Federal Register a notice containing a list of the data elements from the FAFSA that are subject to verification for the upcoming award year. And the U.S. Department of Education published that Federal Register for the 12-13 award year in July of 2011, and in that publication listed the FAFSA data that is subject to verification for an applicant for the 12-13 award year. And that data is number of household members enrolled at least half-time in eligible post-secondary institutions, except if the number in college reported on the FAFSA is 1. For tax filers, data subject to verification includes adjusted gross income, or AGI, U.S. income tax paid, untaxed income, untaxed IRA distributions, untaxed pensions, education credits, IRA deductions, and tax-exempt interest. For non-tax filers, FAFSA data subject to verification includes income earned from work. For all potential applicants, data that a college must now verify for 12-13 includes food stamps, if receipt of food stamps is indicated on the 12-13 FAFSA, and child support paid, if that is reported on the 12-13 FAFSA. Now here's how that IRS data retrieval tool we talked about earlier folds into the verification process. It's not only useful on the front end when the student is applying using the FAFSA, but it's also very helpful on the back end to eliminate the need to submit additional documentation to the college for verification. Data an applicant transfers into the FAFSA via the IRS data retrieval system constitutes verification of adjusted gross income, or AGI, taxes paid, and any of the applicable untaxed income items if the applicant makes no changes to the data transferred from the IRS. Conversely, if the applicant changes data transferred into the FAFSA from the IRS data retrieval system, is not eligible to use the IRS data retrieval system, for example, in the case of an individual who is married but filing separately, or the applicant chooses not to use the IRS data retrieval system, the applicant must provide the college with an IRS tax return transcript to verify certain tax-related data that is provided on the FAFSA. And only in limited cases now the college may accept a signed copy of a 2011 income tax return if the college determines that the applicant cannot obtain an IRS tax return transcript. The last issue that I'm going to talk about is very, very current, and I have discovered in the last 48 hours is in flux on a daily basis, and this has to do with Pell Grant funding for the remainder of the federal fiscal year that is currently in progress and that ends on September 30th of 2012. Right now we have funding for the federal student aid programs, including the federal Pell Grant program, and funding that provides or authorizes the current annual maximum Pell Grant award of $5,550 through a series of what's called continuing resolutions, whereby Congress enacts a short-term measure that continues funding for the federal student aid programs, including the federal Pell Grant program, for a period of a month or so until they believe that they will finally be able to work out a federal student aid spending bill that will authorize funding for the remainder of the year. The current continuing resolution authorizing funding for the federal student aid programs expires on December the 16th at the end of this week. And so Congress is now working on a bipartisan federal spending bill that seeks to maintain the $5,500 federal Pell Grant annual maximum award through the end of the current federal fiscal year by enacting a number of cuts in other areas in the federal student aid programs. Keep in mind, at this point, these are only proposals, but this is the most recent direction that Congress is headed. The proposal on the table right now is to eliminate interest subsidies on subsidized Stafford loans during the 6-month grace period, to reduce an undergraduate student's lifetime eligibility for a federal Pell Grant award from 9 years to 6 years, to reduce the annual income level that automatically results in a zero EFC and thus the maximum annual Pell Grant award from $30,000 a year to $20,000 a year. And while it's not reflected on this slide, yesterday there was an additional proposal put on the table to provide cuts in other areas to shore up funding for the annual Pell Grant maximum annual award, and that would eliminate current provisions that permit students who do not have high school diplomas to qualify for federal student aid by taking what's called an ability to benefit test. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the current continuing resolution that authorizes funding for all federal student aid programs, including the federal Pell Grant, expires this coming Friday. As of today, we have a report that this omnibus federal spending package that would authorize funding for the federal student aid programs appears to have hit a snag in the Senate, where Democratic leaders are concerned that Congress may need to stay in session into next week in order to address the bill. This concludes my portion of the presentation. We're going to turn it over to Todd for the state update.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Todd at the Iowa College Student Aid Commission, Director of State Financial Aid Programs. The next piece of our webinar will focus on our state financial aid programs. You'll see a breakdown of each program that we administer according to the application that's required of the applicant to submit. The first group are programs that require only submission of the FAFSA for the student to effectively apply for the programs. Those programs are all need-based in nature. The second group of programs require that the student complete both the FAFSA and the Iowa Financial Aid application. These programs do have additional criteria that we need to evaluate besides just financial need, and that is why the additional application is required. The next group of programs require only submission of the Iowa Financial Aid application, and that is solely the Iowa National Guard Education Assistance Program. We do encourage all students to also complete the FAFSA, but the only one required for an eligibility determination for this one program is the Iowa Financial Aid application. I do want to make note, the Robert C. Byrd Honor Scholarship, which is a federally funded scholarship program, was eliminated by the Federal Continuing Resolution of 2011. There were no new awards during the 2011-12 academic year, and there will be none moving forward. You should have received communications from our office, I believe last spring, regarding the elimination of that program. The next slide shows the required applications, and more specifically, the applications that you would need or your students would need to complete in order to effectively apply for all programs offered by the state. The free application for federal student aid is available at the link provided, and that is the application, the primary application for all state need-based grant aid. Once an Iowa resident completes the FAFSA, they are taken to the FAFSA confirmation page. On the FAFSA confirmation page, as you can see on this slide, all Iowa residents are given the option to link directly to the Iowa Financial Aid application. So they can get to the Iowa Financial Aid application from the FAFSA confirmation page now. There are also 2 direct links that an applicant can access to complete just the Iowa Financial Aid application, and those links are available on our agency website, which is www.iowacollegeaid.gov, and also from the I Have a Plan web portal, which is available at www.ihaveaplaniowa.gov. The applicant can access the Iowa Financial Aid application by clicking on the blue Iowa Financial Aid application banner. This next slide shows the general eligibility criteria for state financial aid programs. And basically, in order to qualify for Iowa programs, a student must meet the general eligibility criteria for federal student aid, which would be being a U.S. citizen, an eligible non-citizen, so on and so forth. Be an Iowa resident. Students must be enrolled as an undergraduate student in at least 3 credit hours in a program of study that's eligible for federal student aid. A student must attend an eligible Iowa college or university, which generally is the Regent Universities, Iowa's community colleges, private not-for-profit and private for-profit colleges within the state. There is one federally funded program, which is ETV, the Education Training Voucher, which is portable for Iowa residents to take to out-of-state institutions that are eligible for federal student aid. Students must complete the required applications by the published deadlines. They must maintain satisfactory academic progress, which Carolyn gave you an update on a little earlier. And they must not be in default on a federal student loan. Now keep in mind, these are the general eligibility criteria that are consistent amongst most of these state programs. There are additional qualifications that must be met for each individual program. I'll be going over those in a little more detail here in the next few slides, but you can also find detailed information on each of these programs on our website at www.iowacollegeaid.gov. Okay, getting into some more detail. The first group of programs are the programs that only require the FAFSA as the application. Generally speaking, these programs all have a FAFSA filing deadline of July 1, and the programs here are listed. First program I'm going to talk in detail about is the Iowa Tuition Grant. Students must attend an eligible private not-for-profit or proprietary college or university located in the state of Iowa. Students must complete the FAFSA by July 1 each year. The maximum award is $4,000, although the funded maximum award may be less, and that all depends on the number of eligible applications that we project to have, as well as the appropriation for the associated year. For the current year, which is 2011-12, our maximum Iowa Tuition Grant award is $3,500. And students can receive this grant for up to 4 years of undergraduate study. In 2010-11, which is the most recently completed academic year that we have data available for, almost 18,500 students received Iowa tuition grants in the state of Iowa. The Iowa Vocational Technical Tuition Grant is the next program I'll speak in more detail about. Students must attend an Iowa community college and enroll in a vocational, technical, or career option program to be considered for this grant program. Students must complete the FAFSA by July 1 annually. They can receive a maximum award of $1,200, although, kind of like the Iowa Tuition Grant, the funded max may be less than that. And students can receive this grant for up to 2 years of undergraduate study. During the 2010-11 academic year, almost 3,000 students received Iowa Vocational Technical Tuition Grants. The Iowa Grant Program assists high-need students attending Regent Universities, independent colleges and universities, and community colleges in Iowa. So it assists students across sectors. Students must complete the FAFSA annually. Please do note there is no application deadline for this program. The maximum award is $1,000 for up to 4 academic years of undergraduate study. This program operates a little differently in how the students receive the funding. The appropriation is distributed to the colleges and universities through allocations. And financial aid administrators at the colleges and universities select their students with the most financial need to receive grants under this program. And this program served approximately 1,500 students during the 2010-11 academic year. The Iowa Barber and Cosmetology Arts and Sciences Tuition Grant assists high-need students attending eligible barber or cosmetology colleges in the state of Iowa. Students must complete the FAFSA by July 1 annually and can receive a maximum award of up to $1,200 for 2 academic years of study. This operates very similar to the Iowa Grant program. Eligible colleges and universities receive allocations which they distribute to their most financially needy students on their campus. And during the 2010-11 academic year, just under 100 students were served under this program. The next group of programs that we'll speak in detail about are state financial aid programs, which require both a FAFSA and an Iowa financial aid application to be submitted in order for the student to be considered. Now, generally speaking, these programs each have a priority application deadline of March 1. So they should submit their FAFSA and the Iowa financial aid application by March 1. Now, you'll see it's noted that the Education Training Voucher Program and the All Iowa Opportunity Foster Care Grant Program, that March 1 deadline only exists for renewal students. So their new students can apply after that and be considered. The All Iowa Opportunity Scholarship. For students to be considered, they must begin their initial enrollment at an eligible Iowa college or university within 2 academic years of graduating from high school and continuously receive a scholarship award. Now, this scholarship is only available for the first year of college enrollment if the student attends a Regent University or a private college or university in the state of Iowa. If a student chooses to attend an Iowa community college, they could receive the award for up to 2 years, their first and second year of enrollment. But they must reapply and meet the eligibility criteria for the second year. To be eligible, a student must have a 2.5 high school GPA on a 4.0 scale, and they must have an expected family contribution at or below the average Regent tuition rate for the corresponding academic year. Now, the Regents just approved their 2012-13 tuition and fee rates last week, and that amount is $7,806. So, looks like for the 12-13 academic year, our EFC range for the All Iowa Opportunity Scholarship will be $0 to $7,806. If we can't fund all students that are eligible and apply between January 1 and March 1, we do have groups that receive priority for funding. Those groups are students in federal TRIO programs and youth that graduated from alternative high schools or that participated in alternative high school programs. And during the 2010-11 academic year, just over 430 students were served under this program. The Governor Terry E. Branstad Iowa State Fair Scholarship recognizes outstanding Iowa high school seniors who have actively participated in the Iowa State Fair. Up to 4 scholarships, ranging from $500 to $1,000, are awarded each year. And scholarships are awarded for the recipient's first year of college only. They are non-renewable. Students must be a high school senior to apply, and there are a number of documents that they must submit in order to effectively apply for this program. And it may be beneficial for them to go out to our website and look at the details and complete these documents up front so they can submit them with their application at the time that they apply. But a list of these documents would be a list of extracurricular activities, a list of volunteer and community services, a list of Iowa State Fair involvement, an essay about the impact of the Iowa State Fair on the applicant's life, and 3 letters of reference. And during the 2010-11 academic year, 2 students were served under this program. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Julie Voss, who will cover programs for foster care youth and members of the Iowa National Guard.
Good afternoon again, everyone. As Todd mentioned, my name is Julie Voss, and I'll be covering the next few slides of our presentation. I do want to fast forward us through the next two slides, which provide detail on the ETV program and the foster grant program. Because the programs are quite similar in nature, I find it's easiest to talk about the two programs when I compare and contrast them. So we'll just stay on this slide with the table, and we'll talk about the similarities and differences in these programs. To receive the ETV grant, which again stands for Education and Training Voucher Grant, the student can enroll at any eligible college or university in the country. And the thing that makes a college eligible is that they participate in federal Title IV programs, and a really easy way to know if a college is eligible or not is, do they offer Pell Grants to their students? Compare that with the foster grant program, where the student must enroll at an Iowa college or university. So that program is only for Iowa students attending Iowa colleges and universities. The ETV program can serve students who exit foster care at the age of 18 or students who are adopted after the age of 16. The foster grant program serves those same populations, but in addition can also serve students who leave the state training school after the age of 18. For the ETV grant, the awards range from $3,000 to $5,000 per academic year, and that is for student enrolled full-time. Students enrolled less than full-time can receive prorated amounts. Maximum award amounts for the foster grant program range from $2,210 to $7,670 per year. Again, those are full-time award amounts. Students enrolled less than full-time can receive prorated amounts as well. And finally, for both programs, awards in both the ETV and the foster grant program are made in date received order, with returning students receiving first priority. And so that means any renewal student has until March 1st to complete their application to receive funding. And after that date, then we start looking at all of the new kids who applied in January, February, and March. So those new students will want to apply as early as possible to receive first or maximum benefit, I guess, from these programs. And now we will move on to the third set of programs. As Todd mentioned, there is a group of programs that require only the free application for federal student aid be filed. There's a group of programs that require both the FAFSA and the state financial aid application. And finally, we'll address this third category of programs that only require the submission of the state financial aid application. And there's one program in this category, and it is the Iowa National Guard Educational Assistance Program. The Iowa National Guard Education Assistance Grant provides annual awards to Iowa National Guard members who attend eligible Iowa colleges and universities. And the maximum grant award is equivalent to the average resident tuition rate at the Iowa Regents universities. So once all three regents determine their tuition rate, we average that out, and that's the maximum grant award that Guard members can receive. In order to be eligible for this program, the student must be a member of the Iowa Army or Air National Guard unit for each term that the member receives benefits. They must satisfactorily complete Guard training. They must maintain satisfactory performance of Guard duty, and they must be pursuing a certificate or undergraduate degree. And during the 2010-2011 school year, just under 900 soldiers were served by this program. We want to thank everyone for your participation today. If at any time you have questions about state financial aid programs, please feel free to contact us here at 1-877-272-4456 or send us an email at grants@iowacollegeaid.gov. And we would also encourage you to visit our website and view the Word document that contains some questions and answers regarding this presentation.